Coming up today, flouting UN resolutions yet again. North Korea tries but fails to launch a ballistic missile off its eastern coast. President Park Geun-hye is in Kenya to promote trade and business with the East African powerhouse. She'll hold summit talks with her Kenyan counterpart on Tuesday. First, Korea's industrial output takes a tumble in April as production in the mining, auto and electronics sectors slows amid the global economic downturn. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Tuesday, the 31st of May. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. We are going to start with the President's tour of East Africa, now into its final leg. President Park Geun-hye has arrived in Kenya, the biggest economy in that region. She will hold summit talks with her Kenyan counterpart later on this Tuesday. Our Song Ji-son, who is travelling with the President, files this report from Nairobi.
Kenya, the largest economy in East Africa, is also Korea's biggest trading partner in the region. The transportation and economic hub also functions as a gateway to enter the entire continent, as well as the European and the American markets. Kenya is vying to emerge as a new industrial nation with its Vision 2030 for growth, and President Park's visit to Nairobi will be focused on laying a foundation for Korean businesses to enter East Africa. In exchange, Korea will share its knowledge in the e-government, ICT and health sectors. And President Park will also ask for Nairobi's cooperation in implementing the UN sanctions on North Korea, with the hope that it will encourage other African nations to follow suit.
The two sides will discuss ways to enhance economic and development cooperation, anti-corruption initiative, anti-terrorism, and also touch upon regional issues, including North Korea's nuclear issue.
President Park has a full day ahead with a summit followed by a business forum and a cultural event. She'll also check how the Korea Aid Development Program will run in Kenya and stop by the UN office here in Nairobi, which is the United Nations headquarters in Africa. Song Ji-son, Arirang News, Nairobi.
Now, staying on the topic of President Park Geun-hye's tour to East Africa, and the President's trip to Kenya is also expected to elevate their economic cooperation to the next level. For more on the potential of the Kenyan market and where the two countries stand in terms of economic relations, Kim Min-ji reports.
Kenya is East Africa's economic heavyweight. Thanks to its favorable geographic location and gateways, such as the port of Mombasa and Nairobi Airport, Kenya is considered a hub from which to make inroads into other parts of Africa. Kenya also plans to build a railway to connect it to neighboring countries like Uganda and Rwanda. And for its array of IT startups and large pool of entrepreneurs, it's also been dubbed Silicon Savannah.
If you look at Kenya, especially Nairobi, you can see that it's very developed and stands up quite favorably to other major cities. Information technology is well established and the service sector is also relatively active.
With the GDP of $63.8 billion, Kenya is the world's 69th largest economy. This year, it's expected to post growth in the 6% range. However, the Kenyan economy is still heavily dependent on agriculture, which accounts for about a quarter of its GDP. As part of efforts to become more globally competitive, Kenya is pursuing a mid to long-term plan to achieve annual growth in the 10% range through 2030 by fostering 6 key areas, including tourism, IT and finance, as well as making its political system more efficient. Korea established diplomatic ties with Kenya in 1964, and their partnership has been economically beneficial to both sides over the years. Nairobi is Seoul's biggest trading partner in East Africa. Korea's main export items to Kenya include cars and synthetic resins, while Korea imports copper and food from the African nation. More than 24 Korean companies are operating in Kenya, including big names like Samsung and LG. And with the East African country pushing ahead with infrastructure projects, as well as establishing industrial complexes, more business opportunities are springing up. But as promising as it sounds, Korea isn't a front-runner.
Korea is late, very late. China has been investing aggressively and has been part of massive construction projects. But if there's something to learn, China hasn't been able to improve the livelihoods of the local people.
While Korea can learn from the mistakes of others, experts say it should not consider China or other advanced countries as competitors. Instead, it should seek ways to work together, which will help Korean companies sidestep political risks and help them attract capital. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, in the rest of the day's news, North Korea has once again attempted to fire a mid-range Musudan ballistic missile off its east coast, but to no success. To give us the latest, we're going to connect to our Kwon Jang-ho at the news centre. So, Jang-ho, what do we know so far?
Good afternoon, Mark. At 5:20 a.m. South Korea time this morning, North Korea launched a mid-ranged Musudan ballistic missile from the coastal town of Wonsan. Seoul's defense ministry has confirmed the launch failed, but is still investigating how far the missile flew and the specifics of the launch. It's the latest in a series of embarrassing failures for the Kim Jong-un's regime. On April 15th, the first ever launch of a Musudan missile exploded in midair, and 2 weeks later, 2 more missiles were launched on the same day, with both also ending in failure. The Musudan has a theoretical range of 3,000 to 4,000 kilometers, which would make it capable of reaching as far as the U.S. territory of Guam, and is capable of carrying a nuclear warhead as well. The South Korean Joint Chiefs of Staff said it's on alert, preparing for any further provocations.
Yes, so we must remember as well that this failed launch is a clear violation of UN resolutions as well. Jang-ho, though, we are also hearing reports that North Korea's former Foreign Minister, Lee Soo-yong, is on his way to Beijing. What more can you tell us about that?
Yes, so Japanese media outlet Kyodo News is reporting that Ri, the current vice party chairman, boarded a plane in Pyongyang and is on his way to meet with China's leadership. This will be the first time a high-ranking North Korean official has made the trip to Beijing since the regime's 4th nuclear test in January. It's unclear what the purpose of Ri's visit is, but the international community will be closely watching Beijing's response to its next-door ally. I'll have more on this later as the story develops. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Jang-ho, for that report. Now to the latest on the follow-up to Seoul and Tokyo's landmark agreement on Japan's wartime sexual slavery. The first preparatory committee meeting tasked with establishing a foundation for the victims is currently taking place as we speak in Seoul. The committee will discuss the future direction of the foundation and prepare to start operations as early as next month, in June. Under the agreement reached in December of last year, the Japanese government had promised to contribute more than $9 million to the fund. The committee is facing some obstacles, however, as civic groups are calling for the renegotiation of the deal, saying most of the surviving victims are against it. The victims argue it does not include a sincere apology from the Japanese government or appropriate individual compensation. Korea's 3 main political parties are continuing their discussions on how to fill key parliamentary posts following the opening Monday of the 20th National Assembly. Officials say today's closed-door talks between the deputy floor leaders of the parties will centre on who to put forward for National Assembly Speaker and the leadership of powerful standing committees like those for the judiciary and budget. In the previous assembly, the ruling Saeuri party, which had a majority, took the speaker post, while the main opposition Minju party had the judiciary committee chair post. However, since the ruling party lost its majority in last month's general election, big changes are expected. Given the opposition party's strong showing in the April poll, the parties aim to complete all these negotiations before June 7th. Financially troubled Hyundai Merchant Marine is holding an assembly of bondholders as it looks to consolidate a huge debt. Korea's second largest shipping company met with its bondholders at Hyundai Group's head office from 11 a.m. today and is scheduled to meet again later today and also on Wednesday. Now, the debt in question amounts to some $675 million US dollars. Along with the debt recast, the shipper is faced with a charter rate cut and inclusion into a global shipping alliance, just in order to keep its head above water. According to its main creditor on Monday, Hyundai Merchant Marine has made some progress in its efforts to cut its charter rates. Now, Korea's overall industrial output fell on month in April for the first time in 3 months. Making matters worse, it dropped at its fastest pace since July of last year. Shin Se-min with the details.
Statistics Korea says the nation's industrial output went down 0.8% in April from the month before, logging the fastest pace of decline in 9 months. It comes as overall output had been showing signs of a pickup in February and March after it dropped in January. Production by Korea's mining, manufacturing, gas, and electricity sectors dropped 2.8% in April from the same month last year, with industrial output in those sectors retreating 1.3% on month. Spurting auto production that plunged 8.7% on year, as well as falling output in the electronics parts and display sectors, played a big role in the overall fall. Statistics Korea says a jump in production in the semiconductor and petroleum industries worked to offset what would have otherwise been a much bigger decline. But it's not all doom and gloom. Domestic consumption expanded last month, increasing 4.2% on the back of robust sales of durable and non-durable goods like automobiles and cosmetics.
Domestic demand is good at this time, and the improved leading composite index indicates the economy will pick up smooth recovery momentum in the future.
Production in the service sector grew over 2% on year and 0.5% on month, thanks to the steady stream of Chinese tourists vacationing in Korea. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, staying with economic news, and South Korea's competitiveness on the global stage is slipping. Releasing its annual ranking, one of the world's premier business and management institutions said Korea was on the brink of dropping out of the top 30. Kim Mok-yeon has more.
The International Institute for Management Development says South Korea's global competitiveness ranking fell to 29th among 61 countries, dropping 4 notches from last year. The Swiss-based institute that releases competitiveness rankings every year based on a country's economic achievements, infrastructure, and government and corporate efficiency said South Korea's major economic indicators have slowed over the past 12 months. In terms of economic achievements and infrastructure, South Korea ranked 21st, down 6 notches from a year earlier. Corporate efficiency dropped to 48th, tumbling 11 notches. On the other hand, in the government efficiency sector, South Korea rose 2 spots to 26th, marking the first ranking upgrade in 3 years. South Korea's finance ministry attributes the overall poor rating to a slowdown in the economy and employment, corporate restructuring, and corporate ethics problems. Looking at other countries on the list, Hong Kong climbed 1 notch to the top of the list this year, pushing former number 1 the United States to number 3 behind Switzerland. China fell 3 spots to the 25th, while Japan edged up 1 place to 26th. Kim Mok-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, life is set to get a little tougher for smokers here in Korea because the city of Seoul is once again promoting its ban on smoking near subway stations, set to go into effect this autumn. To raise awareness of the ban, the city has designated the first of every month as an Awareness Day and put up warning signs and posters in crowded stations to inform the public. City government banned smoking within 10 meters of subway exits earlier this month, and the regulation will take effect in September after a 4-month grace period. Violators will be hit with a fine of up to $85 US. City officials say the ban will help reduce secondhand smoke exposure and encourage smokers to kick the unhealthy habit. Now, unfortunately, Korea's central region is once again suffering from poor air quality today. Seoul and its surrounding areas remain under a blanket of fine dust, so it is probably best to wear a face mask if you have to spend much time outside today. In regards to the actual weather, there is cloud cover over much of the country. Not that you'll be able to see it that much, but it will feel warm nationwide, with the afternoon highs reaching the low 30s, in fact, in some parts of Gyeongsang-Namdo and Gyeongsang-Bukdo provinces. The mercury in Seoul will top out at a comfortable but rather warm 27 degrees Celsius. And since the temperature gap is pretty big between day and night, try and take good care of your health, particularly with the air being so bad. Well, that's all we have for now on this Tuesday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for tuning in. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Our next scheduled bulletin coming up with Hyundai at 3 p.m. Korea time. So until then, goodbye.